No one expected a Bible-quoting Sunday school teacher to become one of the most disruptive political figures in Texas, but that's exactly what happened. Now listen carefully, because what you're about to hear is the story of James Tallarico that most people never hear. Not the viral clips, not the sound bites, but the reason why his voice suddenly terrifies some of the most powerful donors in American politics. James Tallarico didn't enter politics with a war chest. He entered with a question: what if loving God actually meant protecting your neighbor through policy? And that question would soon place him directly in the crosshairs of Texas power brokers. Because the real shock isn't that Talarico is running for the U.S. Senate, it's who is desperately trying to stop him and why. James Tallarico's political journey doesn't begin in a smoke-filled room or a corporate board meeting. It begins in a classroom. Before becoming a Texas state representative, he was a public school teacher, and before becoming a viral political figure, he was deeply shaped by his Christian faith, not as an identity marker, but as a moral obligation. At a time when religion in American politics was increasingly weaponized, Talarico took a radically different approach. He didn't use faith to exclude, he used it to expand the circle. But that raised an uncomfortable question. Could a faith-based message survive inside modern progressive politics? Texas is not a neutral battleground. It is a state shaped by gerrymandering, donor influence, and deeply entrenched political machines, and James Tallarico walked straight into it. Elected as a Democrat, he quickly gained attention not for incendiary rhetoric, but for moral clarity. He spoke about universal health care not as a policy preference, but as a moral necessity. Education funding wasn't a budget issue, it was a promise to children. This framing changed everything, because suddenly arguments against him weren't just political, they became ethical, and that made him dangerous. Curiosity gap. Why were powerful interests suddenly spending millions to redraw maps and silence voices like his? Redistricting in Texas has long been a tool of control. District lines are drawn not to reflect communities, but to neutralize them. Talarico didn't just oppose gerrymandering, he explained it, publicly, clearly, relentlessly. He exposed how democracy itself was being quietly edited, and for the first time, millions were paying attention. Online, clips of his speeches spread rapidly. A young lawmaker quoting scripture while dismantling corruption. This wasn't supposed to work, but it did. Rehook, because the more authentic he became, the louder the backlash grew. The attacks came fast. Super PACs, dark money, narratives designed to paint him as naive or dangerous. Then a shift. James Tallarico announced his run for the U.S. Senate. Short sentences followed, sharp reactions, sudden urgency from GOP mega-donors. This was no longer symbolic, this was real, and the question changed from who is he to how far can he go? Imagine the pressure. A young legislator standing against billion-dollar networks, every word scrutinized, every belief tested. At moments, millions were watching live, screens frozen, as he spoke calmly about loving neighbors in a political system built on division. He didn't shout, he didn't perform outrage. He reminded people of something older, something uncomfortable, that morality doesn't belong to one party, and that scared people. Because if voters began to believe that the entire structure could shift, James Tallarico is no longer just a Texas politician. He's a symbol of what happens when faith is used to include rather than exclude, when progressive politics speaks in moral language, when power is challenged without hatred. But the real truth? No one knows how this ends yet. Will donor money crush momentum, or will authenticity prove stronger than influence? Because the question isn't just about James Tallarico anymore. It's about whether American politics is ready for this kind of challenge, and whether Texas, of all places, will be where it begins.